rebirth. Scorned and ridiculed, she carried her affliction for years. There came a time when she bled, until one day her body buckled, and there laid she in her scarlet pool. That filthy maiden was as good as dead. But Jesus reshaped her from earth's dust and delivered her from the hands of the cruel.
Welcome to another episode of Becoming Consciousness with Sharika. My name is Sharika Swaby, also known as the Mind Reset Strategist. I am a certified life coach, mentor, and mental health first aider. I am also the author of a book called An Introduction to Freedom, where it outlines a step by step process to help people find happiness. I'm also a speaker and, of course, the host of this show. So today, my guest is Marguerite Anderson. She is a lover of literature and the author of the Brain Edibles collection. Marguerite, thank you so much for joining me today.
It is my pleasure, Sharika.
Oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I get excited about this, really, really excited. Okay, so let's jump right into it. I want our audience to be able to connect with you. So, would you mind telling us about yourself? Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What was childhood like for you?
Well, my childhood, it was what I would call bittersweet. Bittersweet because of the era in which I grew up, that was in the 70s. There were expected norms that in my adult years, I realized that those socializing and those social ways in which children were raised, it did impact greatly, negatively too, on me as an adult. Mind you, there were many positives that I took from my childhood, but I grew up in the era when children were taught to be seen but not heard. And as a result, ingrained in my growing up was the idea that we should not talk about what's happening to us, how we feel. We never had a voice. It never mattered if someone hurt us or if an adult, you know, meted out some form of injustice towards us. Adult only listened to other adults. They did not listen to children. And I took that experience with me into my adulthood, so much so that for a great deal of my adulthood, I remained a victim because it is how I was schooled. And it took a lot out of me to break free. So I was raised in the community of Waterhouse, and I attended primary school in that community, raised in an extended family where there were my grandparents and their children, you know. So it was a really big family. An aunt or uncle got married, that person would move out. And in my mind, it was for a great part a happy home, a happy home. I had a nurturing grandmother, and she herself was an educator, and I was schooled at the basic school that she was the founder of. So my childhood, it was mixed emotions, you know. I can't say that it was all bad. I grew up with very sound, fundamental values, you know, Christian principles that I am so grateful for the rigidity on which I was raised because it kept me grounded all these years.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that you said you were brought up on sound principles. And I was born in the 80s. And interestingly enough, that trend of being seen but not heard was still echoed throughout my time as well. So I am 100% familiar with it, and it did have probably similar effects on me as well because I didn't even speak at school. So I can understand exactly what you mean when you said you were not allowed to speak. And it's funny how much that prevents us from becoming ourselves because it's our expression, it's our ability to express ourselves, how we learn about ourselves. So that
Yeah.
completely erodes that part of our personality. So I saw some parts of your story on Facebook. I want to talk about you're a beautiful woman, so I can tell that as a youngster, you were also a beautiful woman or a beautiful youngster. No, I want to talk about a little bit about what your beautiful smile was covering up as a teenager. What was happening there?
Okay. Well, thank you for the compliment.
You're
But when I was
welcome.
growing up, there was nothing about me that felt beautiful. Nothing about me. It is interesting that adult figures don't understand the extent to which their words can injure children. Adult figures will say things in what they believe is jest, but they are placing a scarlet letter on that child's breast. Um, I always felt ugly growing up. Um, I have a trademark that is of my father. I have fingers that are not very feminine. They're not feminine looking. I have short, stubby fingers. And the kids around me always teased me, but that was okay. It was from kids. But when it came from the adults, then it was a whole different spin. And I remembered I used to be teased so much. My aunt-in-law told me nobody would marry me because the minute the person looked at my hand, no man would want to put a ring on that finger. And my grandmother, she said to me, "Don't worry, little Susie." Susie is my pet name. And my grandmother, she would say, "Don't worry, little Susie. The man who God has chosen for you will see your heart before he sees your hands. And your heart will be so beautiful that what is on the hands will not matter." Outside of that, my mother, all my life, all the life that I have known, knowing my mother, she has always suffered from mental illness. And I had adults in my life. I'm talking about family members, people in the church, people in the community, just adults all over, uttering words like, "You're going to be mad like your mother." Or they would call me Madix. And those words hurt.
Yeah.
They hurt because indirectly they were poking at me.
Mhm.
But to me, they were ridiculing the mother that I love, the mother that birthed me, the mother who I saw more of than just her mental incapabilities.
Yeah.
I saw a woman who was broken, but I didn't know what broke her because I was too young. Only as I aged, as I matured, and I saw what life was and what life is capable of doing to the wholesome man, I understood the cycle. I understood my mother's cry, and I understood how those around her abandoned her. And even echoed words that tore her down rather than build her up, you know. So I've always wished that no one would have to suffer the way I or even my other siblings did. I'm really speaking for myself, because people receive experiences differently. Some persons are empowered by an experience, a negative experience.
Yes,
Some persons are hammered into the ground by that same experience.
absolutely.
And I know for years I was hammered into the ground. It made me insecure. The words remained with me like an omen over my head. I had to fight my way out.
Yeah,
And it's a good thing I'm Piscean, because if you tell me that this is what I'm going to turn out to be, that defiant spirit of the Piscean is going to want to prove you wrong. And it's that defiant spirit that pushed its way through.
right, right. It's amazing that our own family sometimes misunderstands us, and because now, even today, mental health in Jamaica it's not taken as serious as, say, a heart issue. It's not taken up as an illness, but it's really an illness. And if you're alive, if you're living, if you're growing, if you're expanding, you are susceptible to having mental health issues, because you have a mind, and the mind tends to overthink, and you can get depressed and sad. And there is a large area that needs to be brought to the light, so to speak. People
Yes.
needs to become aware of how important it is. Because of the stigma of mental health, people don't talk about it.
I want to tell you, Sharika, I'm 51 years old and I am still having to deal with family members who still place labels
And yeah,
on me. Just weeks ago, a family member told me that I am mad and I must go and take my medication. I had to laugh. I had to laugh, particularly because the retort came out of my taking a very sane approach to a situation. You
yeah,
see, as individuals, we have to be very aware that
yeah,
the devil presents himself in persons,
yeah,
even those close to us.
absolutely.
Family, yes,
Hmm.
the devil presents himself in those persons. And that is why it is so important to have a relationship with Almighty Creator, because
Absolutely.
He is the one who has your print. He is the one who designed the printout for your life. And you should never let any man put a label on who you are. Claim your destiny in the name of Jesus. And
Amen.
I cursed that relative. I damned her to hell. In fact, I just chuckled because I said, boy, if only she knew she's the crazy one.
But it's funny because when people don't understand us, they tend to take that approach as well. They tend to take that approach as well. And if you're doing something that's outside of the norm, you're thinking outside of the box, because I've been called crazy. I've been told that this is not going to work, as in this what I'm doing, because this is uncharted territory for me or anyone from where I'm from or in my family. This is not something that we do. So I've been told that, right? And I understand completely, because when they don't understand us, they tend to think that we're crazy. And it's important what you said. We as individuals, we have to know who we are. We have to have that groundedness. So when someone says something like what they said to you, you can absolutely chuckle because I get that completely. I get it because it happens to me and I just nod my head and smile because I get it. I understand. They are, how I see it is someone else cannot understand your vision, and especially if they don't have a vision themselves.
Yes, yes.
So I try not to make a big deal out of it because I know where it's coming from. It's just a lack of identity in many
Indeed.
instances.
Indeed.
Now, let's backtrack a little bit to um, children being seen and not heard. In our society today, a lot of that, this generation coming probably started with my generation, I'm not sure. But I have two kids and I encourage them to speak up. For example, my daughter, if she looks sad, she's 13. And if she looks sad, she will not be able to move from in front of me until she can tell me what's going on. Because we need to be able to communicate. Now, when I was growing up, no, but I can't remember anyone ever asking me, "Are you okay?" I cannot
Ah,
remember ever getting that question. Are you okay? If I look sad, then say, "I want to you. Where you going so far? Fix your face."
yes,
Things
yes,
like that.
yes,
Nobody ever asked me if I was
yes.
okay. And like you, I grew up, I felt less than for majority of my life until a couple years ago when I started to understand myself. I started to read and learn about my own divine power, right? So I understand the effect of that. But today, though some kids are allowed to speak up and speak out, do you think we've taken it too far in terms of the boundaries?
I believe that the so called modern parents, yes, they have taken it too far to the point where, in too many instances, the child is dictating to the mother, even on the most basic of levels. I'll give an example. When I was growing up, there were many things that I thought, as in terms of food, I thought it was disgusting. I would get served tripe and cow foot and all of that. And for me, that's disgusting. Men love that, mind you. But for me, that's disgusting. But I ate it because in our home, what the policy is, whatever God has placed before you, eat it and give thanks. I am very thankful for lessons like that because I find that children now have too many options. Oh, I don't eat this and I don't eat that. And then you have a parent cooking 2 and 3 pots. Ridiculous. Especially when you have a home with the parents. I'm not even going to pluralize it. Let's singularize it because we know that there are many single mothers out there, right? The parent is very often hardly able to make ends meet. And then to come home with the stress of a child, not wanting this and not wanting that. I have that issue with my child. She's 10 years old. And I am constantly pulling out the old ways. I'm saying, listen, when I was a child, when my aunt or my grandmother placed something in front of me, I had to eat it. And you will eat it. So, yes, there are instances when I believe we do take it overboard. We need to pull the good stuff from our past, draw on the good stuff, and incorporate some of the ways that we know weren't, uh, or rather, let's exile those ways that were not good when we were growing up and try to do better by our kids.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There needs to be balance because I have a son. My son is 6, he just turned 6 in March, and he tends to be very picky. So he doesn't want this, he doesn't want that, he doesn't want this, he doesn't want that. What I tend to do is I allow him to get hungry. And at that point, he has to eat because he's
Yeah.
hungry. there are some things that he absolutely won't eat, and I understand that. But most of the times when I know it's something he eats, but he just doesn't want it, I just allow him to get hungry, and eventually he will eat. Or you. But yes, there needs to be balance with that. With what's happening now, there seems to be a trend of things shifting to the opposite end of the scope, which is not going to help us. But that's a whole other issue that we don't have time for today. I want to talk a little bit about. So, as I said, I read bits and bits of your story, and your story really inspires me because you're sitting in front of me right now, and we all go through different times in our lives when we struggle, and we once we find the strength to come back, I believe that it's on us to show others that they can come back too. Now, in 2017, you lost your father. My condolences. And after that, a number of events transpired. A number of things happened that would have broken any individual. What I want to know is if you don't mind sharing what happened after your father passed, and then how were you able to come back from that?
In my personal life, things went chaotic. In my professional life, things went chaotic. Uh, Let me start with the professional.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe people understand that when someone has suffered a trauma, in this case, having lost the man that I was the closest to,
Right.
because my father was my friend, my confidant. Yes. Um, I seemed to have a supportive staff in the beginning, offering the condolence and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But in the period leading up from 2017 leading into 2019, there was a dramatic change in my work environment. My co-workers, they were perse- they were persecutory. They were, mm, forgive me, but I'm going to a place that really conjures a lot of pain, you know. Uh, they were not very understanding.
Right.
You see, I didn't have to walk with a billboard on my forehead to say, I am suffering because I lost my father a year ago. I am suffering because I lost my father 2 years ago. I lived on a very remote island. And I believe that there was an element of seclusion that came with living on the island that helped to push me into depression because there was no social outlet for for me to release the pain that I was going through. I had no friends to talk to. I realized that those I thought were my friends, those in the workplace I thought were my friends, they were not my friends because only when the true test comes, and the true test would be how much do you stand up to, you know, to your integrity?
Yeah.
How much do you sell out your soul
Mm-hmm.
when you are to stay true to the profession, when you are to say no to the double standards,
Right.
when you are to treat each child equally, even though you know that we are in a culture where foreign children are persecuted. Because as you know, I live in well, I shouldn't say as you know, I lived in an overseas territory teaching for quite a number of years. And I gained on popularity because one thing that I never lost was my vocality for the truth. And let's just say that experience made me realize the state of man, how fickle it is, you see. Now, as it relates to family, the Bible speaks truth. You know, they say there is nothing new under the sun, you know. You see this Cain and Abel scenario? Sharika, you said that I was able to get through it. I am here, Sharika. But having got through it, I am a changed woman. I'm a changed woman because I was always the kind of person who gets attached. I don't get attached anymore. I don't get attached to family, friend, no one. And I have prayed and asking God, if this needs to change, then I leave it in your hands.
Yeah.
But for now, this is how I have to allow myself to heal. I am not going to allow any unhealed wounds to get any salt rubbed into it. I've been doing that for years. And so I am so closed. I am so closed. Um, I'll tell you that in my family, when it comes to my siblings, there has always been a divide, always. And I'm not going to get into the reasons, but there is only one sibling that no matter what, all my years into adulthood, we remained close. Nothing came between us. But Sharika, it took the death of my father for me to lose her. I saw how, I've always heard of it, that it's amazing when someone dies and the squabble over property and
What's
power
left behind?
of what is left behind. Well, because of that, I I saw a different side to my beloved sister.
Wow.
And that experience, coupled with other experiences, have brought me to the place where I have zero interest. And it sounds cold, but this is a place that my experiences brought me. I have zero interest in building bonds with my siblings. God would have to transform me to bring me to the place where I am able to trust again. But I'm not there. Not today. Certainly not today.
I get it. Trust me, I understand. When it doesn't, to me, to somebody else it might, but to me it doesn't seem cold. I know that place where, okay, I need to protect me. These are my walls. You're not welcome. I've been there. I get it completely. And people think you are cold because that's how they receive it. But I understand. I understand completely. Now, after your dad died, you lost your home in a fire?
Yes. Yes. Now, even the ramifications of that. I remember when I was ready to move on to look another job after my extended teaching period overseas. It was only at that time I realized I don't have my original certificate. So I, even the job that I wanted to accept immediately, I could not accept it because I had to return to Jamaica and apply for these documents. And when I went to my teacher's college, the length of time that I would have to wait to
Mm,
get a replacement of this document caused me to lose the opportunity to get the job that had accepted me.
wow.
So there were so many things that um, only over time when I realized I need this, I need that. Oh my word, this passport must have been in the fire. That expired passport burnt up in the fire. And then I realized there was a myriad of things that
Everything.
needed to be done. You see? Um, but that situation with the fire happened the same year, the same year that my father died, because the fire happened September the 30th. Fire happened September the 30th. And I almost lost my daughter in that
In the
fire.
fire. Oh, wow.
Almost lost my daughter. It would it would take another session
Take your time.
to share, but there are things that happen in my life that I know it is nothing but divine intervention.
Yeah.
And so I know there's a special angel
Watching
watching
over.
over me. And the experiences I've gone through speak testament to that. And I feel so reassured knowing that. So much so that when principalities come my way, I just laugh and I just laugh and I say, all right, no problem. You're only here for a season,
Yeah.
because I know the plans that God has for me, plans to prosper me and not to harm me. And
Amen.
anything else and anyone else who tries to put a foot in that door, it's not going to work. Sorry. It's not going to work. You might as well not sweat it. Give up.
Yeah. I know that feeling.
Yes.
It's a really wonderful feeling, actually.
Yes.
And sometimes, because I've been through some things myself, and sometimes when worry wants to set in, I remind myself that the only reason that I'm here is because there's purpose on my life, that I'm blessed and covered and I am fully guarded. So I understand. I can relate so much to what you just said. It's an amazing feeling indeed. And when you know that no weapon formed
No
against you can
weapon. No
prosper,
weapon whatsoever.
there's this certain amount of ease and peace
Yes.
that you
Yes.
take on with
Yes.
life.
Yes.
And the funny thing about it is, the thing I always get from other people with that kind of peace is that I'm selfish, or
Hmm.
I don't care.
Yes.
But after you've been through a number of things, you tend to not worry anymore.
Yes. Yes.
Things don't bother you so much. Nothing seems like such a giant mountain anymore. So
Yes.
I get it. I get it.
Yes.
It's always lovely when I resonate with my guests so much. But okay. So your dad died. You were burnt out, almost lost your daughter. Thank God you didn't. You didn't have the support of your family. You went into depression. I cannot begin to imagine losing everything, because I lost my purse once, just my purse, and it was quite a task to just get back my ID and TRN and simple
Hmm.
things like that. So I can imagine having to get back everything for both you
Hmm.
and your kid. Did you have one or two kids at that time?
Well, I have three children.
Oh, three. Okay.
Three children. My adult daughter is 30 years old
Wow.
in December. She'll be 30 in December. My middle child turned 20 this past June. And my last, she's 10 years old. Last month, she turned 10. So my children are all 10 years apart.
Do they get along?
Oh, yes, they do.
Okay.
They
Was
do.
there any kind of sibling squabble, as in the smaller one being annoying?
The only squabble came from my son
Mm,
in relation to his older sister, because you see, as small as he was, he always felt he should be in charge. He always felt he should be in charge. He didn't like to get dictated to, by his big sister. So he was always very assertive and very defiant and very loud. And sometimes she would cry. She would cry because my eldest child. She would cry because she doesn't have the heart to give him two knocks in the head. you know, I would flog him. She doesn't have the heart to do that at all.
yeah.
And so when it overwhelms her, she would cry.
Hmm.
And he would tell lies on her, and say, Mommy, Raquel this and Raquel that. And it was all lies. And I used to believe it because he was very convincing until I caught him in the act and I saw him jeering her when he thought I, I, he caught her
Yeah.
on the, I saw him jeering her. And after that, I never believed a word he said.
Oh my God. I asked because you said they were 10 years apart, and my kids are 7 years apart. And I get some of that too. He can be very, my son is the smaller one, and he tends to want to take
Oh,
control
yes.
and be in
Yes.
charge. So, yeah, that completely. Okay. All right. So let's move to Echoes from the Naked Soul.
Yes.
I imagine this was your medium of expression,
Yes, it was.
expressing
It
that.
is. It's speaking loud and clear.
So so your life was the inspiration for that book, and it's a
Yes.
book of poetry.
Yes.
Poetry.
Poetry. Yes.
The title is very intriguing. It says a lot, just because the idea of a naked soul says, I'm putting everything out there and
Exactly.
I'm shedding and putting off. So,
Exactly.
which of your poems is okay? I want to ask you to recite your one of your poems that you think um, would resonate the most with someone who may have had similar experiences as you did.
All right. There are a number that I could choose, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to look at the first poem in the anthology. It's titled Rebirth. And
Mm-hmm.
now I selected that poem because it addresses uh, a situation I went through while I was a teacher. And my colleagues, or I shouldn't say my colleagues, the one or two that I confided in knew about it. I'm choosing to share Rebirth because Rebirth focuses on experiences that I endured while I was on the job and also in my personal space, in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'll read it to you.
Okay.
Rebirth. Scorned and ridiculed, she carried her affliction for years. There came a time when she bled, until one day her body buckled, and there laid she in her scarlet pool. That filthy maiden was as good as dead. But Jesus reshaped her from earth's dust and delivered her from the hands of the cruel. There came a time when the unborn in her womb laid still, showed no sign of life, curled in its fetal tomb, and concerned expression on the faces of doctors, alas, were ready when they considered the deciding factors. But she, in all the noise, lie unperturbed. No doubt it was God who administered that herb, and in an instant rebirth the babe leapt, bounded and gallivanted. There came a time when all around her beloved child a fiery furnace closed in, but Jesus enfolded. But sorry, there came a time when all around her beloved child a fiery furnace closed in, but the loving arms of Jesus enfolded the child with oxygen. Methinks that maiden would not have made it to the other side after the many years of stained tears she cried. But she is Mother Earth, and God has granted her rebirth. Now I'm just going to share a little backstory of this poem. Rebirth begins with the affliction, or should I say, an affliction that I endured for years. Now, many women are embarrassed to talk about a similar affliction. They suffer in silence. What is that affliction? I had a bleeding problem. It got so bad that I almost lost my life. I remember collapsing with my baby under a year old. I remember collapsing just as I came out of my car, having picked him up from daycare. Uh, as I was coming out the car, I knew I was about to blacken out. And the only strength I had was to call out to my neighbor who I could see sitting on the balcony above my head, because I know I was going to collapse, and I focused so much on cushioning the baby so that the baby would not hit ground but more would be cushioned by my body. But I had a bleeding problem, and as a single mother, I knew I needed to take time to go and tend to myself. But taking time meant not being at work. And the work world very often doesn't care about your
Right.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
The work world intends for you to show up and get the job done.
Yeah.
And I knew as a single mother, I could not allow myself to lose that salary.
Right.
And so I did not have the time to take to go and sit down one day at university public hospital, so that by the end of that day, possibly I would have to come back another day to sit down another day. And
Yes.
so I kept neglecting myself,
Mm-hmm.
and the bleeding problem got worse. It got so bad that very often I'd be teaching and I'd have to ask the students to excuse me, and I would go to the ladies' room and I would have to clean myself up. I always had to walk with extra change of, you know, it was it was very embarrassing for me. And I remember the biblical story of the woman with the issue of blood. And only when I was going through my experience, it occurred to me, I am this woman. This is probably the sickness that wasn't named in the Bible, you see? And it, it, it was so difficult to deal with it because I was embarrassed to let everyone know. And I would have accidents, and I would have co-worker, and I sometimes I'm not aware of the accident, but co-workers now said unkind things about me.
Wow.
And when after a couple of years, I did surgery to correct that problem. But then years after that, the problem came again. And so even while I was living overseas, I was suffering all over again with that problem
Right.
and reliving having to deal with the unkindness
Mm-hmm.
of the co-workers. And listen, the most unkind are the females.
Yeah.
Women are so unkind to
To other
women,
women. Yeah. That's true.
so unkind.
That is true.
So they made assumptions rather than give support and maybe even ask a question. Ask, is something wrong? What's happening? Talk to
Yes.
me. You
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah.
No, they tore me
Pouring
down.
down. Yeah.
They tore me down.
It's a culture, though.
It's a culture. It
It's a
is.
culture.
And so I carried the affliction for years. I could not continue working. I was deemed tardy on the job because no one knew that this is why I had to leave my classroom. Mm,
I can feel your pain. I can understand because that issue is looked upon with so much scorn.
scorn, yes,
But it
yes,
shouldn't be. There are so many things in our society that we really need to talk about
yes,
because it shouldn't be scorn.
yes.
Everything, if we don't have that cycle on a monthly basis, there is no life.
I'll tell you, Sharika, in the history, in my history as a teacher, if I'm to calculate the climate, the school climate that I have been in, and I'm speaking collective school climate, both
Yeah,
in Jamaica and overseas,
right.
there is very little support for teachers going through things in their personal work. It's always about giving support to the children. We are not remembered. We
And
are
then there
not
are
remembered.
individuals.
We need to hold it together and get the job done.
Hmm.
Yes?
And
And then um, there is a thing where you don't feel the need to address the situation until it's knocking right at your door. Yeah. And of course, there's nepotism too. So only certain teachers got the support while others didn't. You see?
yeah,
Yeah.
hmm,
So
I
I
can
lived, I
understand that.
lived through all of that.
I can say one thing, and this is something that I've probably been able to say to most of my guests. When you've been through, there are some of us in this life, we go through some things, and there are some of us that go through a lot of things. And I tend to believe that when you've been through a number of things, for example, like what you've been through, it's nothing that has kept you alive more than a blessing on your life.
I am telling you.
Nothing else.
I am telling you.
I am 100% certain of that. It can't be anything else. Now, there is a poem that I saw, a glimpse of, that I would love to hear. Would you mind showing us the cover of the book so that if
Here
others
it
are
is.
interested? Okay, yes, perfect. Echoes from the Naked Soul by Marguerite C. Anderson. Guys, pick up your copy. I get the feeling that,
Oh, just letting you know, outside of it being sold on Amazon, it is now in two of our bookstores in Kingston, Jamaica.
lovely.
It's at C Mart, the Reader's Bookshop in Ligony Plaza, and it's now at Fontana Pharmacy, Waterloo Square.
Beautiful.
All
Amazing.
right.
Okay, so that next poem is titled, I believe, Lying Bastard. Can you?
Lying bastard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Yes. Unveiling the lying bastard. Page 31. Lying bastard. Dear Bob, it has been mighty long that I have licked my wounds and cursed your song.
Mm.
I wish you had warned me, Bob, that the lying bastard came only to rob. My shame bathed in my suppressed sobs. Did you not tell him, Bob, that a man with no good intention is a mere coward to awaken a woman's affection, only to feed her a dose of rejection? And Bob, I bet you turned 10 times already in your grave to witness that dirty, low down knave. I don't know why he takes up Sunday morning space in the pew. Such a lying bastard has made me a miserable shrew. And he, an apt description of the one who wears many faces to meet the faces he meets, has his fans believing he is far above suspicion. But Bob, you and I know that lying bastard casts his face from the very seed he sowed. He came to rob and he came to kill. That insidious lying bastard will one day swallow his own pill.
Wow. No, I have to ask, what inspired this one?
Let me tell you, there are seemingly upright men,
Mhm.
seemingly upright men,
Yeah.
who the community, the society
Celebrate.
at large, believe they're all that and a bag of chips.
Mm-hmm.
They are the perfect bosses,
Mm-hmm.
the perfect churchman,
Yes.
the the perfect everything.
Yeah.
But many a men have very ugly secrets that they are covering up.
Mm-hmm.
And this poem is an is a conversation between the poet and Bob Marley,
Yes, I got I picked up that
because
part.
because it is alluding to Bob Marley's song that says no woman no cry. And the poet is saying to Bob Marley, it seems as if you wrote that poem and lied to us women who have encountered men like that, because there are men who they have children and they have abandoned their children.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows of their children.
Yeah.
No one knows. They keep that dirty little secret under the bushel. Yes? Hidden.
Yeah, that's true.
And sometimes it is only the silence of the women who aid and abet the
Absolutely.
good grace that they continue to have.
Absolutely. Nobody speaks.
And sometimes the women try to tell the story, but the persons they're trying to tell the story to are still so mesmerized by what
By that person.
they
Yeah.
believe
Mm-hmm.
is the true essence of the person.
That is true.
Yes? And
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you this, good persons are capable of doing some very horrible things.
They are.
But I believe that when Almighty God allows experiences in those persons' lives to, to teach them a lesson, it is not anybody's place to try and make it better for them. They must endure
Endure.
they must endure the lesson. Why is it that God is acting? 'Cause let me tell you something. God is a man who answers in the nick of time. And God will speak to you on your sick bed. And if you are in a fast lane and he's unable to speak to you because of all the noises, he will put you on your back.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So,
a powerful poem. That one
yes.
there. It sinks in
Mm.
very much. I mean, both of the poems that you've read. If you're watching this, go out and pick up a copy of Echoes from the Naked Soul. If you're in Jamaica and you're seeing this, she mentioned earlier the bookstores that carries the book, and it's also available on Amazon. Based on what I've seen so far, what I've heard, you won't be disappointed. I'm sure of it. So go out and pick up a copy of that. So, Marguerite, we are running out of time. And the final question I want to ask you is I've sat here and I've listened to you, and I know based on the language of your poems and what we've spoken about, I know that there are a lot of issues that touch close to home with you. What impact do you want to make on Jamaica, on the world? What legacy do you want to leave behind?
The first thing I want to accomplish is to get women to speak out, but to do so constructively, not verbal bashing in the home,
Yes,
throwing words back and
yes,
forth. Do so
absolutely.
constructively.
I agree.
Women have been muzzled for too long. And I am hoping that in the same way that I was unmuted when I penned my deepest, darkest thoughts and feelings of experiences that are mine, and also those I witnessed around me. Sometimes, it could be in other person's life. I incorporated all of these in this book because I recognize that I have to hold my fellow female's hand and say, you are not weak when you tell your truth. You are strong when you are unafraid to say, look at me,
Hmm.
these are my wounds, I am bruised, I am not going to act as if I am perfect. Can I
Yes,
tell you this? Anyone out there who acting as if they're perfect, they are lying.
absolutely. I
So much crosses, so much crosses in a
yeah,
their life.
a
They must
lot.
be a tear with cobweb, and the cobweb can't don't tear with all now. Don't be fooled.
I
Here,
agree.
even the man at the very top. Ah, Langston Hughes talks about this nature of quiet desperation in it. Is it Langston Hughes? In Lorraine Hansberry's play A Raisin in the Sun, there is a concern of man quietly suffering from some kind of anxiety that binds him, that imprisons him. And this is what I'm speaking to. But this book is not only to speak to the anxieties of women, it is everyone, because some of the poems will reach the child, because the poems came from a place when I was a child. You know what I'm saying? Some poems will demand certain responses from a man, will wake up a man. Come on, be the best version of yourself. Come on, take your seat as a man in the family. That's where you belong. Women are not supposed to be sitting in your seat. I am
Tell
an
me about it.
independent, strong woman. I don't want to sit in your seat. I am only there because you have not stepped up to the plate.
Absolutely. I agree. So much things to talk about. That is the I think you highlighted like three topics that I'm currently looking for people to discuss them with. One of them is the man being in the house. Another is people suffering quiet desperation, and it happens more so because the women tend to maybe confide in a friend, but the men don't say anything at all. And I think that's part of the reason why we have this breakdown of the family structure, because they're suffering and they don't know what to do about it, so they run up and down and act like crazy people. But and then there is the other one that you mentioned. I don't remember at the moment. But my final question for you. Did I say that was my final question? I do this all the time. I'm so sorry.
That's quite fine. I don't mind. I'm a
No,
talker.
uh, having been through so much, there has to be, or I'm assuming that you have a
Met-
methodology. I'm assuming that you have a
I'm
methodology
tongue tied too.
that you use to help you to remind yourself that you're strong and you're here for a purpose, and to keep you away from that depression, because when one has suffered from the depression, it's easier to fall back into that. So what's your method? What's your routine?
I dance.
Oh,
Simply put, I dance.
okay.
I
Is there
turn the volume up and I dance, and I have my one man party. In fact, I have my two-man party because my 10-year-old, oh, I mean, she is my die-hard party in the bedroom, in the living room kind of person.
oh
The
my
two of
god.
us, I turn on my colorful lights, I
Mm-hmm.
blast the music, and I go on YouTube and I plug in music of the 80s. And my 10-year-old, she is stuck on 80s music. She will just find the music and say, "Mommy, come. We're ready." And
Yeah.
we dance.
I love that. I love that. My household, my currently it's myself and my son and my daughter, and my son is all for it when because he loves the music. So when I start, he's ready to go, and I
Yes.
like to blast as well. And my daughter sometimes looks at me and says, "Mommy, you're okay."
Yes, I know what you mean.
So I get that completely. Marguerite, it was so lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. I know that your story is going to impact someone. And that's the idea. That's why we're here, to share stories so that other people can know that they don't have to be stuck. They can overcome. They just need to find the strength to take one step at a time. And that's all
Indeed.
that is required. And once you start to take that step, help will come. And it's not going to come from the people that you think. God is going to put the people that are going to help you to take that step. I mean, I've seen this happen so much in my life. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
fascinating. So
Indeed.
you just need to take that first step, and you'll get the help and the support that you need. Do
Indeed.
you have any final words, Marguerite?
No, I just want to thank you, Sharika, for having me on your program. And for those of you watching this, I want to impress upon you to support our Jamaican authors, because gone are the days when you and I, in studying literature, most of the poetry that we were reading, we don't even know that these people are still alive. We are reading poems from dead people. Well,
Yeah.
I'm here, I'm alive, I am well. Okay? So please share, share. The name of the book, Echoes from the Naked Soul. Once you punch that in any search engine, find my links, follow, subscribe, share. If there's anything that speaks to you, if you want to reach out to me in a private message, do so. Otherwise, share on your social media and talk about the impact that it has. It is time to unmute your voices. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Margaret. And it was an absolute pleasure to have you here with me. As you can see, I'm all smiles. Um, and I'm glad to know that you're here because the fact that you're here means you have victory. And guys, this is my book. It's entitled An Introduction to Freedom, and it's really a book for healing. So if you feel like you've been where Marguerite has been, or you are there still, or you want to take the next step, this can be a first step for you. And once you go through the process, I guarantee you, you will make some progress. Now, again, I want to thank you, Marguerite. This is a pleasure. And I just want to let you guys know that you have been watching Becoming Consciousness with Sharika. My name is Sharika Swebi, and this is where spirits come to discover their soul. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye.